welcome to the Acid Trash Jamboree, and to the last episode of the year. In this video, I'll be keeping it simple by reviewing a couple of the films that I've enjoyed this month, one rewatch, and one first-timer, so let's get started. Okay, so in Ghostkeeper, it's New Year's Eve in the snowbound Canadian Rockies, and a trio of holidaying youngsters have decided to break away from their friends so they can explore their surroundings on their snowmobiles. Ignoring warnings from a local shopkeeper, arrogant asshole Marty, his sensitive girlfriend Jenny, and the unstoppable floozy Chrissy make their way deeper and deeper into the wilderness until they happen upon the imposing Deer Lodge Hotel. Seeing as they're freezing cold and hopelessly lost, they make themselves at home in the seemingly deserted lodge, which, according to the logbook, hasn't hosted a guest in over 5 years. Whilst Chrissy and Marty flirt unashamedly, Jenny picks up on a presence in the hotel. And sure enough, they're not alone. A mysterious old crone is living there with her elusive son, though just what else could be lurking in the shadowy recesses of Deer Lodge? Well, for some reason, the makers of Ghostkeeper decided to ruin this surprise right away with an ill-advised information slide, speaking of folklore and local legends. So unless you want half the plot ruined for you, be sure to avert your gaze during these opening seconds. Spoilers aside though, this is an effectively spooky chiller. Some label the film as a slasher, and whilst it does borrow liberally from the likes of Black Christmas and even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in places, in reality, as well as lacking a central killer character, the body count here is on the low side, and there's hardly any gore on offer. Yeah, overall, Ghostkeeper is a slow burn, minimalistic affair, geared way more towards building an uncanny atmosphere of dread and foreboding, which director Jim Makichuk pulls off well, using the genuinely creepy hotel location very much to his advantage. Yeah, for me anyways, there's something decidedly ominous about old, dark, isolated buildings like this. And sure enough, the characters do more than their fair share of wandering about in Deer Lodge, to the point where we can just about smell the fusty interiors. In terms of its vibe, despite being made in the early 80s, there's a strong 70s hangover feeling to Ghostkeeper, which is always a welcome thing as far as I'm concerned. And it's helped along nicely by the mostly very subtle score of wispy ambient synthesizer and flute. And speaking of production dates, I'm not sure if it was shot before or after The Shining came out, but yeah, for my money, whilst it's obviously nowhere near as well crafted or as sophisticated as Kubrick's masterpiece, that's the film that this one resembles the most, rather than any kind of slasher flick. That said, if you appreciate fellow snowy creep fests from around the same time, such as Curtains and Satan's Blade, or stuck in a building in the middle of nowhere efforts like Unhinged, then Ghostkeeper should be right up your alley. Yeah, this is probably the 3rd time I've watched it since I got it, and sure enough, I fully intend on sitting through it again. On to The Appointment, another early 80s chiller, this time from British director Lindsey Vickers. And yeah, even more so than Ghostkeeper, the less you know about this one going into it, the better. So just to give a brief outline of the plot, it begins with a flashback to 3 years earlier, when a young girl vanished in highly mysterious circumstances on her way home from school. Jumping forwards to the present day, we're introduced to a well-to-do family. Mother and father, Diana and Ian, played by Jane Merrow and Wicker Man legend Edward Woodward respectively, and Samantha Waysome as Joanne, their teenage daughter. Now, whilst Joanne is extremely bright and a talented violin player, she's also somewhat strange, away with the fairies almost, and has an uncomfortably close relationship with her father. However, this special bond is stretched to breaking point when Ian is forced to miss Joanne's imminent school concert due to last-minute work commitments. Following a restless night of disturbing nightmares and strange occurrences, Ian sets off for his appointment early the following morning, which is where things get even stranger. Okay, so despite being ever so British in just about every conceivable way, this one was apparently the pilot for a series of TV movies to be screened initially in America under the banner of A Step in the Wrong Direction. In the end, though, the series was cancelled, and none of the other films were made. Vickers was slated to direct several of these, but disillusioned by the disappointment, he ended up stepping away from directing forevermore. Which is a shame, really, as on the strength of this film, and a short entitled The Lake, which comes as a bonus here, he was really onto something. As with Ghostkeeper, this is another slow burner, though in The Appointment, scenes are stretched out way beyond what you'd normally expect in a horror movie, building the tension to almost unbearable levels, to the point where you almost feel trapped in the movie yourself. Granted, whilst this does have a few memorable moments of release, if you're in the mood for something altogether more happening, then I can appreciate that this approach won't be for everyone. And yeah, since watching it, I've read quite a few other reviews writing it off as a snoozer. But again, if you enjoy flicks that are more about creating a dread-filled, nightmarish atmosphere, rather than walloping you over the head with action and gore, then this, and the aforementioned short, The Lake, are well worth your time. But whether you enjoy it or not, reading about the film's history, what's clear is we're lucky to be able to see The Appointment in decent quality at all, as the film's negative, as well as the prints made from said negative, have either been lost or destroyed. Yeah, it was only after years of searching that a tape made for TV broadcast was finally discovered, languishing in an archive. So kudos to the BFI for working their magic and resurrecting this gem from the abyss. So, a nice low-key video to round the year off. As I said, these films aren't for everyone, but if you're into more subtle and suggestive horror, then you can do a lot worse than these two. Okay, so thanks a lot to everyone who's watched and subscribed this year. If you're new to the channel, please do take a look around the archive for further content along similar lines, and I'll catch you again soon on the Acid Trash Jamboree.